um, because Eric did not normally teach children um, less than 12 years of age water skiing lessons, but he made an exception for a 9-year old um, uh, blue eyed blonde girl that, reminded me a lot of John Bonet when I interviewed this girl in September of 1999 when she was 12 years old, because Rudolph had also sexually assaulted her during her water skiing lessons while he was accompanied by Ghislaine Maxwell. So there's been a lot of controversy over that picture of John Bonet and Ghislaine over there in Helen, Georgia during Oktoberfest of 1996, because the deep state, that picture came out before Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that it was because the Ramseys did not anticipate that Ghislaine would wind up getting arrested, or they never would have released that picture to the public. Another factor I found the other evening in one of these um, podcasts, I think it's a True Crime Rocket Science. They're all the time doing podcasts. Some can be 30 minutes. Some of them can be up to 2 hours when they'll go in and cover um, new evidence and elements pertaining to John Bonet's homicide. But one of the sources in North Carolina um, made a very interesting point today that where he's not certain of the first name of the prosecutor there at the Boulder District Attorney's office, who last name Shapiro, was part of helping um, John Ramsey stage, um, you know, the murder as though it had happened in the Ramsey home, which um, everyone else is discovering that that is not the case, that she was not murdered in her home, but actually, especially, after midnight, but was actually murdered right around 7:48 p.m. Christmas evening at the another location down the street from the Ramsey's home. So we're going to get to see what the Department of Justice releases on the Epstein files. They've releasing the names of the people who went down there to the island St. James. Um, uh, there in the Caribbean. Um, um, People like, Barack Obama. They said even Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and a lot of others been there. But when you sit there, you listen to Donald Trump's campaigns. Donald Trump has admitted that he's had a lot of knowledge of the stuff. He's never stated what magnitude of involvement that he had in it, if there was any involvement in it at all, but his knowledge and his association with Jeff Epstein. But what is coming out now that other people are starting to release the information on is the fact that members of the Mossad, people like Larry Fink, Les Wexner, Arthur Blank, Bertie Marcus, Ron Brill, Ken Lagone. Now, the names I just mentioned there, besides Fink and Wexner, are the founding executives of the Home Depot Corporation, which, of course, Arthur Blank, he owns the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United soccer teams today. But they had a plot and elaborate scheme to attack their own corporate headquarters there on Juneteenth, 1997. I want to say Juneteenth, June 19th. I had mistaken it as June 13th, but it was actually June 19th, which was right around 15 years after I witnessed what I did down there at the Chattahoochee River, to the date, which was June 19th, 1982, when they went down there and gang raped and murdered um, two black teenage boys from out of state. Because the murders continued there at the Chattahoochee River after Wayne Williams was arrested for the Atlanta child murders, which Williams never was charged for any of the child murders. He was charged with the homicides of two adults. Not one time was he ever charged um, with any of the Atlanta child murders, even though he has been labeled as a serial killer and responsible for the Atlanta child murders.
Yes.
So we're about to find out what the new DOJ is going to have to offer the people. Um, I have a lot of confidence in Pat, Cash Patel and um, Dan Bongino being appointed by Trump in their positions. Bongino, he worked with the New York Police Department. This is what I did not know about him. Um, and he also worked with the Secret Service, something else I did not know about him. But between working in law enforcement, working with Secret Service, I don't think it really Trump could go wrong in appointing him as the um, deputy director of the FBI. So, since they're releasing this information, there's a lot of people now. They're starting to dig in to what we call the Franklin cover up.
Could I could I talk about this right here too? Because right here you said about, is Craig Owens still a sheriff, or what is he there right now?
Yes, Craig Owens is still sheriff of Cobb County.
One thing I copied from your old account to the words here. Here's one sheriff trying his very best to protect the perpetrators of the June 13th, 1997 attempted truck bomb attack on the Home Depot corporate office and the role in the murder of John Benet Ramsey. Other words, in other words, Craig Owens is the first black white supremacist sheriff of Cobb County. Too chicken to stand for his people, greedy enough to sell them out at the Aryan Republican Army and the LGBTQ of the KKK.
Yeah, see, this was something I had forgotten, was the what they call I think it was what they called the um Black Order or something like that. This was a more radical organization than the Ku Klux Klan, and um, today is known as the New Order of the Ku Klux Klan, which is the same thing stemmed from the order being part of the Gridiron Secret Society. They're based out of Athens and Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
Um, is also the father of the Aryan Republican Army of God, or um, Finders Cult, or all these variety of names that they're all the time coming up with, like Rick, Ricky Allen's defense attorneys out there in the Delphi murders wanted to call it an Odinist cult, which is just pretty much another name for the order, the Aryan Republican Army. They call themselves Army of God. I've always called them the Army of Godless, along with half of Murphy, North Carolina, because there's nothing godly about going out and attacking abortion providers and then turning around and sacrificing children. Um, there's nothing pro-life to it. I mean, if you're pro-life, you're pro-life. You're going to be for the life of the unborn as well as the life of those who are already born. Um, you're not going to stand against abortion because they're murdering potential victims of a child sacrifice or child sex trafficking. Um, there's some people call the other side pro-choice. Well, still murder's murder, um, whether the fetus is aborted or whether the child is already born and the murder. Murder is still murder. Either way you look at it, and it still has the same flavor. Either way, you're taking away the life of another human being, whether they're born or whether they're unborn. So,
Yes.
what was really um, intriguing about the Franklin cover up is all of this really started popping up and occurring there around the late 1970s and into the early 1980s, as far as um, the first Bush administration using the government credit card to pay for escort service of underage teenage boys out of Franklin, Nebraska. Um, Once this was discovered, they took U.S. Senator John DeCamp out of Franklin, Nebraska over the Oversight Committee, and they appointed Ted Gunderson, who was the assistant director of the Los Angeles field office. And Ted, he went in and he did an investigation, and he uncovered pretty much the same horrific stuff that I uncovered when I was in Murphy, North Carolina, um, with a group who at that time was going by the Army of God, which is actually the Aryan Republican Army and the order of the Gridiron Secret Society. Um, so we're talking politicians, even members of Congress, um, which of course we know that Hunter Biden and Eric Rudolph, and among the many other suspects of the Oklahoma City and Centennial Park attacks, Mike Cook, the primary bombing suspect of the Oklahoma City bombing and Centennial Park attacks. And a couple of his brothers was involved in the homicide of John Benet Ramsey, and as well as the victims of the West Memphis Three homicides, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, those 3 8-year-old boys. Um, that these other boys, Jason Miskelly and Damian Eccles, and I forgot the other boy's name, got convicted of. And then, of course, later, the convictions got overturned and they had to enter you know, an Alford plea in order to get out of prison. One of them was actually on death row. But these these child murders and missing children that go unsolved, you can pretty much figure it's all connected to the same organization. There'll be a few cases out there where some stranger will, you know, meet a child online nowadays and entice them out. That's what was this recent case there in North Carolina where this 15-year-old teenage girl met
Can you
a
see?
couple of
Can you
guys
see?
online, and they found her over in eastern North Carolina. They're on the coast where they were
Charles,
trafficking her.
Charles, can you see the screen? You're being told hello and all. So text coming here telling you hello.
Hello, everybody.
One thing I want to bring up too is whenever I found I want to read a couple of the things you said under the about Judge McLaughlin, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, let's thank Cobb Senior Court Judge Mike McLaughlin for the death threats and abuse of office because if it not for him, it would be more difficult to bring Vic Reynolds, Reuben Green, Justin Wyatt, Neil Warren, and not only the police officers responsible for murdering Sergeant Glenn Turner, Officer Jeff Jenkins, Cheryl Underwood, David Ackerman, and Bridget Clodfelter to justice, but also those Cobb officials tied in with Hunter Biden and Speaker of the Georgia General Assembly, David Ralston, and domestic terrorism. Thank you, and Justice McLaughlin, for helping us with our spelling because justice, Justice, is how we spell it, unlike just us. See there, you misspelled an important word there, buddy. and so he actually tried to did some more death threats against you as well, right?
Well,
When you
yes.
when you tried to sue or something like that.
Actually, it's like you know, like I stated before, the first time I ever saw Mike McLaughlin in my life, I was on the back of a school bus in the eighth grade on my way home when I was, you know, led down the street from Sheriff Bill Hudson and his sister, and of course his cousins Charles and Richard Hudson, who used to build houses with my dad on Ebenezer Road.
Yeah, I got it right here. It says, I guess I shouldn't be so hard on those who wronged everyone, including myself. But my point is, even though you still tried to get justice today, and with him being in office, right?
Yes.
He still refuses to do his duty and prosecute. Instead, he still makes death threats against you. Am I right or wrong?
Well, he was in the invasion of my house in 2013 with the rest of the bunch. John Ramsey, my brother Fred Rogers, Roger Nance, my cousin Robert Beach, of course. The Bentleys, Ed Bentley Jr., Fred Bentley Jr., and Randall Bentley Sr. Joe Pugh was there. Um, Grady Moore, prosecutor with the DA's office, he was in that invasion. Ron Brill, one of the executives of the Home Depot Corporation, he was there when they forced me that injection. And I found out some of the other names. Well, Matt Zangara, uh, he was he was there, but he was standing guard out front of the house. Uh, it was the Steve Gold. He was there. Jeff Carrier, a real estate broker in Atlanta, was there. These are guys that have been pretty much trying to kill me since my childhood. Well before the Bentleys. Well before I witnessed that incident in 1980, because Ed Bentley Jr.'s brother-in-law, Jim Stubbs, is the one who was buried up there in Morganton, Georgia, from where he tried to execute me back in 1975 when I was only 9 years old. So
Right.
it's still the same group, the same people that is responsible for all of this. You can pull up the Gridiron Secret Society online, and you'll see names like Jimmy Carter, Saxby Chambly, David Ralston, um, Sonny Perdue, um, David Perdue, Johnny Isaacson, um, all these people that were in cahoots with Zell Miller and Joe Biden, and of course, the Clintons and um, Barack Obama and Al Gore, and all this bunch that is still tied over to Jeff Epstein. Um, it's still the same organization that runs the government, runs the financial institutions in this country. Um, so they pretty much run everything, from the banking, the financial, to the military, medical, and prison industrial complex. Um, Everything that our parents and grandparents fought against in World War II and World War One, um, we are pretty much under the control of the same people that we were fighting against, or thought we were fighting against, in both world wars. And I remember growing up listening, to my family who had served in World War II. My daddy, he had served in World War II. Um, my mother's uncle Durrell Veach, he served in the Third Army under General Patton, and he used to joke about, um, if Hitler knew that he was out there in Normandy as a member of the royal family of Germany, um, trying to shoot one of them big old bullets up his butt. He used to joke about that. The way he used to put it was kind of funny, because he was a German royalty, and but he fought. He was proud to fight Hitler, and we were brought up, that Hitler what was the most evil, and we never was taught that much about people like, you know, Joseph Stalin, and the Bolshevik Revolution, and they have pretty much hidden a lot of history, what they call the old world. And I'm trying to think of the name right off the bat, but I've been covering the subject on Facebook here for the past few days. Um, it was I can't think of the name right off the bat now, but it still boils down to the Khazarian Empire, is what it is, the Khazars, and the Ashkenazi Jews and Zionism, and that is pretty much what we're up against today. The same thing that the Russian people were having to deal with whenever they had Stalin, when the German people were having to deal with when they had Hitler. Um, Same thing with the Chinese people when they had Mao. And of course, um, the Italians when they had to deal with Franco. The socialism is all the same thing. It just has different flavors added to it to make it more appealing for the for the times whenever the people are approached with it.
Yes.
But even Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a member of the Gridiron Secret Society, and
Who's that? Who did you say that you said?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay.
You know who Franklin Delano Floyd was named after?
Yeah, that's why all of a sudden it just cut me off guard when you said Franklin Delano, and then I was like, no, no, not really. Jeez, man.
Well, some of these names really, really amaze me. People that would name their children after these leaders. Is kind of like my ex-wife's uncle, Andrew Jackson Etheridge. And he wound up getting convicted in 2005 for three-count conviction of first-degree sodomy of a girl he had sexually abused ever since she was 5 years of age. And um, you know, some people get upset at me whenever I tell them that some of the most perverted people you ever meet in the world would be your white supremacists, or at least the leaders of white supremacy. Um, or some the most ungodly people. You don't want to trust them around little girls, but then especially around little boys, because these
Yeah,
people really don't have any respect for human life, whether it's people of African descent or Native American or even of their own flesh and blood. They have no regard for anything really but themselves, and which
yeah,
we got a lot of people that in this world that is all out for themselves and nobody else. But these people take it to the extreme level,
right.
and they capitalize um, off of it. Other people suffering is their gain.
Yeah. It said, like right here, I'm opening up the one on Ed Bentley, the different ones. You want me to read the different files? But it's almost like some of it did not finish copying for some reason into here. So, if anyone in Marietta doesn't know what one of the top leaders of the Gay Brigade terrorist organization looks like, this is Ed Bentley Jr. I think he's earned the title of the white supremacist sexually assaulted by the most black boys in North America. Maybe we need to pray for Fast Eddie because we know all black folks are not bad people, but Ed just apparently doesn't see it that way. So it's not like he's suffering from the Stockholm syndrome and has compassion for the black race because he still wants them all dead. So that's more of a form of PTSD, and probably for Jim Stubbs bumping Ed's head too hard in the headboard on the bed while doing his favorite thing to poor Eddie. So let's show some compassion regardless of how abnormal he is, and show him that love and kindness toward others defeats hatred instead of fueling. Because poor old Eddie probably doesn't realize that women are meant to be with a man instead of him because being with black boys. So hopefully one day he will fully develop some morals of some sort because of the brutality of Jim Stubbs and those that was being so harsh and cruel by also calling him Pee after thanking him. Now, if that's not cruelty, then I don't know what is. Poor Ed Bentley is still sore at the world from Cobb County turning a blind eye to the sexual assaults of Eddie, but also turns a blind eye to the children he has murdered. So
Mm-hmm.
let's hope that once he stands before a judge for sentencing and he pleads on how many sexually assaulted him, that the judge won't take credit for it as well and slap him on the wrist like that judge did for his gay lover Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, even the Jews had treated poor Eddie unfairly. Isn't that just pitiful of Jeffy and his misconduct? Eddie couldn't give Jeffy his massages, so Jeffy just hired some. They didn't copy the full length of that, what I was trying to share.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go
Well,
to the next one that you had put, okay? I
well, I,
mean, the different one.
well, I figure it was time to give Eddie some of his own medicine because, you know, he, him and his brother-in-law Jim Stubbs, um, and of course his daddy George Bentley. You know, this George Edward Bentley Senior and George Edward Bentley Junior, and Ed is Junior. George went by George, and Ed goes by Ed, but he's still Junior. Um, it was him and his brother-in-law who were trying to get me to do the stuff with Jim's 5 and 6 year old daughter back in 1972 and 1973 when I was 6 and 7 years old. So I always told some of my friends I would get them back one of these days. Um, after
Hello,
so many decades of these
good to
people
see you, John.
putting out their misinformation and lies about me since my childhood. There's a reason why I did posts like that. Just so whenever someone pointed it out to Ed Bentley, he could kind of see how it feels himself to have somebody out there, which at least you know some of that I'm saying is true. It may not all be true, but enough of it is true. Um, just just to see if he can handle some of his own medicine. Um,
So I'm asking anybody if they got any questions, they can write it in here. I've got the questions too in here, so I can ask you, okay?
but Eddie, my cousin Robert, and the Bentleys and Marietta were very much, tied to Jeff Epstein, John Ramsey, um,
Did you see them? You even seen them over there at what was that, Waffle King, or
Waffle House. Yeah.
is that Waffle House and not the Waffle King? Because I know there's sometimes you talk about the Waffle King too, where you used to work. So I got confused at which one.
Well, I used to work for both of them. Back in the day, I even used to work for Huddle House for a while.
I
Um,
love some Huddle House now.
yeah, that's what a Waffle King is. Waffle King was started by Charlie Crowder, the former vice president of Huddle House, and went out on his own in Alpharetta, Georgia. Got into real estate and opened up his chain of restaurants called the Waffle King. So they're originally Alpharetta based. He opened them up all over the place, and I think the only three that are remaining is the one in the community of Panthersville there in DeKalb County, Georgia. Decatur, and of course Blue Ridge and Murphy, North Carolina. I'm not aware of any other ones that are currently open. But if you're not willing to pay for good help, it's going to be hard to keep good help, is the way I put it. Because Charlie Crowder Never was really into paying for good help. He was too stingy. Um, but that was Waffle House Unit 479 that is owned by Ed Bentley that he leases to the Waffle House Corporation. And that is where John Ramsey and Ed and a lot of their colleagues would meet up time to time for their coffee and stuff in the evening whenever John Ramsey was living in Marietta or visiting Marietta. There's that particular Waffle House right there. And that's because the over there at Bentley Farms overseeing the child sex trafficking operation.
Yeah. That's still what keeps getting me in my memory. The guy that I seen, that little boy that I seen run past me that had the blood at his chest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they were using a silencer or whether they stabbed him or what, but I got a feeling they probably were using a silencer. Couldn't, you know what I'm saying? But I remember just being there kind of like in shock and then I seen that little boy run past me, just had blood. And you won't believe how many of these kids that I had seen are dark haired boys, and there's so much similarity in their looks, it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy looked so much like Levi Brady. Seriously, I see Levi Brady's picture. I'm like, almost like a dead ringer for the boy I see murdered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I'm actually glad I didn't get to see the stuff that you've seen because I just don't know how I would have, been able to handle it emotionally. Um, it was a miracle to survive the deadly bouts of pneumonia that I survived
Hey,
in and out of the hospital when I was growing up.
yeah.
And
Don't get me wrong, it's not easy because when I saw that stuff, it put me back into a deep, dark depression. It made me suicidal again. It was like I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. And it was just this past year when I started having the flashbacks about seeing those kids hanging up on hangers and being, wrapped up in plastic and all that, right?
mm-hmm,
So I had to basically stay off of Facebook a while, and anybody tried to talk to me, I didn't want to go to my door. I didn't want to go out in public anywhere. I just wanted to be left the heck alone until I could process and try to heal myself. I didn't feel like I was any good talking to anybody or anything because it was like it's overwhelming. I just felt too overwhelming. What would I say if I went to try to get therapy or something like that? I knew that I just had to get over it, deal with it. I tried to lean on God, and stuff. Because, sometimes they don't believe you when you go to tell them something. They're going to say she's flat crazy and all this and try to put you away in an asylum or something.
well, I would probably been a little bit more brutal up there in Western North Carolina in 1999 if I had saw stuff like that.
You got
Because
to put
there
it.
was a lot of.
You got to put in mind, I was just a kid myself when I was seeing all this. I was not an adult. I was there as a little bitty girl. So there ain't much I could have done, especially with Doug McRae having that gun at his side.
Hmm. Well, that's like these, that's like I went up there one part of Andrews one time, and some family members had killed one of their relatives who was about to kill me once they found out the truth about the stuff. And there was two guys going to kill me one night, and they got apprehended by a group there. And I went over, and one of them he had two daughters. I forgot what ages they were, and I just my conscience could not allow me to sit there and allow him to be executed with two daughters.
Right.
Now, if I had witnessed what you had witnessed, who's to say that I wouldn't have went ahead and approved those two guys' executions?
Exactly.
That it would have
I don't
been.
know why I only remember um, Doug McRae. I don't. It's almost like I just had to basically focus on him or something. I don't really know. It's like the other guys hid in the limelight or something like that, where whenever, like I was coming to or something like that, because I didn't know how I got from outside to inside in there, and I was beside him again and seen the dead bodies. I don't know how. It's like I kept, maybe they drug me off and on. I don't really know. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Well,
So it's
at
kind of
that
like in
point,
and out. Like I don't know. I really don't.
at that point, once,
Joanna,
once,
Donna asked you a question. Is it true that royal families was involved in this? Is also, we do know that the one is very much involved. Andrew is very much and was very much involved with Jeffrey Epstein.
yeah, it's apparent Prince Andrew was involved in a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have been involved with, and um, especially for his age. I mean, good grief, who wants to go out there when they're in their 40s, to be with a 17-year old female? I don't care how pretty she is. He was old enough to be her daddy. And of course, she came forward. She testified against Epstein and she testified against him. Very, very pretty young lady. But, who I just have a hard time relating to why someone would want to go out, you know, and be with a girl old enough to be their daughter or their granddaughter. That is just something beyond me. I mean, which I grew up, I mostly, sometimes I would date some girls a few years younger than me, but then I was also dated some women that were older than me. Um,
Do you think it's true? What the question she asked, that is it true that the royal families, like there's more people that's royalty over there that's in with this sex trafficking as well?
well, I believe there is. I believe sex trafficking is nothing new. It's been going on for thousands of years. The people are becoming more aware of it today with the internet and the information we have today. You know, that's 1995 to 1998. You know, the gridiron's number one priority was to throw this country into a race war, civil war revolution to abolish um, the federal government and drag us into this new world order that they had set up there on Jekyll Island back in 1910. And it's always been this plan that the central bankers like J.P. Morgan and John Rockefeller and um, the others set up. I'm starting to see now why a lot of people believe that the Titanic was a deliberate act to kill some of the bankers who totally disagreed with a privately owned central bank being in control of a nation's money like the Federal Reserve Bank has been ever since it was set up.
Right.
Um, because as a lot more people are waking up, they're starting to see that this nation building is really not in the best interest of the American people, but in the interest of the central bankers. Um, Eric Rudolph, um, if I could never get the Jack Wood having a hideout from the FBI, there's no telling how much money he would have became worth. He was working for Zell Miller and Shirley Carver, teaching little girls like John Benet Ramsey, Jenny, these other girls water skiing lessons and sexually assaulting them at the same time.
Yeah, there
And
you
of
go.
course, they were doing the same thing with little boys over there in Hiwassee Lake in Murphy, North Carolina, the Lake Chattoogas, where they took the little girls. Hiwassee Lake was where they were taking the boys. Um, how accurate this information is. It's hard to sit there and weed out what these people tell you to be, fact from fiction because they lie so much. You can't tell when they're telling the truth or when they're telling a lie. And, but it was to my understanding, I think it was Stevie Branch and some other Boy Scouts or some other boys. Dads brought them over there to Hiwassee Lake back in the summer of '93 or '94. I'm not clear to which other years. And Levi Frady was taken up there by his dad Milton. And him and his buddies, they were up there doing all kinds of horrific stuff to these boys. And Levi, people can go over there to Cumming, Georgia, and talk to his friends, and they'll find out he was totally terrified of his daddy, and he had a dang good reason to be.
Oh yeah,
Because,
I can remember.
um,
I can just imagine so much too.
yeah,
And
they,
I got right here. I got right here. It does not talk about the full thing right here, but I'll read this to you, and then you can add more to it since I did not do the whole story in the copy and paste when I did it from your old account. Which somebody had hacked, right?
uh huh,
The married man can only accomplish what his wife permits or supports him to achieve. Here's a picture of former Georgia Governor that was Zell Miller and former U.S. Senator Zell Miller, whom a Georgia governor and former U.S. Senator Zell Miller. By the way, before I go on to read this, I thought that was really interesting. I also sent a picture of Rosalie Carter standing right beside John Wayne Gacy. I just thought that was really interesting.
mm,
But we go back to this now. It says, and U.S. Senator Zell Miller, whom many around the tri state area believe was a very evil politician, and pictured with his wife Shirley Carver, a banker with the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. One of Zell's accomplishments not mentioned in his public resume was a 1991 misdemeanor child trafficking statute, which made punishable up to 2 years in prison for sex trafficking children. Only 2 years? But also made it a felony offense to prostitute or traffic adults with a sentence up to 20 years in prison. Oh, so okay, you get 20 years if you traffic an adult, but only 2 years if you traffic a child. Really?
that's correct. And that was his 1991 misdemeanor child sex trafficking statute that he had David Ralston, and member of the Georgia Assembly, to draft up before David Ralston was even a member of the General Assembly. Matter of fact, that's what um, Ralston helping draft that bill is what got him in the General Assembly and eventually made him Speaker of the House of the Georgia General Assembly.
Now, another hardly mentioned legacy of Zell was his employment of Eric Rudolph, y'all know the bomber, whom he highly regarded, and the skiing instruction of John Bonet and these other girls who he sexually violated. As a handyman and sheetrock finisher and master of texture, who was texturing the walls of the resort at the Braston Valley Golf Club before and after Eric became wanted by the FBI. As a matter of fact, Miller highly recommended Rudolph to his friends Jimmy Carter, Johnny Isaacson, and David Ralston for Eric to perform his services for in the 90s for these politicians. He
That is,
also highly recommended Eric as a water skiing instructor for children to many members of the Brasstown Valley Golf Club and Ghislaine Maxwell as a chaperone for preteen and teenage girls, including John Benet Ramsey, who became one out of three girls ages 6 to 14 Eric raped on Lake Chattooga while supposedly teaching water skiing lessons with the company of Milady Ghislaine during the race. So she's known as Milady when she's
well,
like this.
malady, malady is
Melody,
the illness, a disease. That's why I call her the malady. Ghislaine, like she's a disease. Uh,
like she's Malus, Invisalign in
yeah,
2004.
malady. Yeah,
Yeah.
malady. It's a illness. It's a disease. That's why I gave her that nickname back in the '90s. Which, of
Okay.
course, I'm not going to say how I exploited her name, but I used to make fun of her name because of the way it's pronounced, and I used to tell some dirty jokes using her name.
I'm
A
glad I
lot
don't.
of people up there didn't know that much about her, but the ones who did really didn't like her. Um, Especially the three girls that I interviewed in September of 1999 that Eric had assaulted in 1996, because you're talking, besides John Bonet, you're talking a girl that was 9 years old. Just a beautiful little blue-eyed blonde. She reminded me a lot of John Bonet. She was, small, petite, and all that for her age at 12 years of age. And then there was this, light brown, uh, light brown haired, brunette. And she was 15 when I interviewed her in '99. That Rudolph had assaulted when she was 12, and was also one of his water skiing students. And of course, the oldest one we interviewed was 17, and she's the one that I saw the day after
Hi,
the
Sheila.
Centennial Park attack in the huddle house there in Blairsville, having lunch with Jeff Epstein that afternoon.
Right.
So that was actually the first time in my life that I had seen Jeff Epstein. Was July the 28th, 1996.
The people naturally had thought that you had to be there or something because you know so much about this. It's the fact that they kept volunteering you information, and then after they say the information, guess what? You were there's chases on for them trying to kill you. I'm sorry, I'm laughing about it. I'm laughing about it now because you survived it. Against all these times they kept trying to go after you to try to kill you.
Well, yeah, and I can understand that. Who's to say if I was somebody that didn't know any better, I would probably, suspect the same thing myself. This guy knows a lot. How does this guy know so much if he wasn't involved himself? But you're right. Doug, he kept feeding me all kinds of information because they just knew they was going to kill me on July the 4th, 1997, either there at Cumberland Mall or at Six Flags. They couldn't make up their mind that afternoon, and until we got in the route where they were going to kill me at. But July the 4th, 1997 was supposed to have been the day I died, right around 3,500 other people. But
Remember,
of
like,
course, they didn't get past Blue Ridge, Georgia, with the help of the Fannin County Sheriff's Department, the City of Blue Ridge, and the Georgia State Patrol. Now, they got stopped right there at Highway 5 and 515, and anybody can go up there. Which, of course, Hardee's, they got smart. After that happened, they built them another location and turned around and sold that location to Burger King. So Burger King's located there, but you still got the McDonald's and the Waffle House. But the people who are in the Hardee's and the Waffle House and McDonald's, and of course Jimmy White, who had her health food store right there on the corner. All these people had to be patrons in these restaurants had to be escorted through the kitchens and out into the rear of the buildings and told to lay down on the ground because there was 9 backpacks of explosives in that 1996 Dodge, passenger van that belonged to Francis Cook, the owner of Murphy Building Supply. And of course, Eric Rudolph was among the passengers, and so that's the day they were supposed to kill me. Well, it didn't. They didn't get to. And there was a lot of other times they thought they was going to kill me, and they didn't get to kill me.
Yeah, like that time Judge McLaughlin was even chasing you, and he ended up wrecking into the brick mailbox and his head on. Luckily, it did not go and hit the mailbox for him because he said, told you later that would have popped like a cantaloupe or something like that, right?
Yeah, he said if his head had hit that brick mailbox, it'd have busted like a cantaloupe.
Yeah. And see, I know I'm finally being a little brave, even though I'm nervous about speaking about some of this stuff, like that time when I was standing inside the Bentley Farms, and I've seen those dead kids all hanging up. I had to be over 20 something, hanging on the hooks and wrapped all in plastic. Um, they already had all the blood drained from them and everything. There was nothing bloody about it. Looks like
Mm,
the bones may have been broken, because it put them in the way they had them in a ball. What nothing, how their bones couldn't have been broken or whatever. And I was looking at him, and he goes, "Well, the only reason why you're still alive," he said, "because you belong to me." That's what Doug Ray said to me.
yeah. Well, I know the second time that I was over there in 1973, I really wanted to go over there and look in the window of that concrete building. It was a barn, and just to see what was in there. But I was told if I looked in there to see, I wouldn't have been able to live after that day. I was told that by both Ed Bentley and Jim Stubbs.
I
So
was
I
one of
was
the
never
few
able to
kids.
go over there to look in to see what is exactly what was in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you're 6 and 7 years old, um, when someone tells you that that'll be the last thing you see, you're not going to go over there and look then. But I really wanted something in me really wanted to go over there and look, but I couldn't go over there and look.
Right. I don't
Uh,
know whether to say I was lucky to still be surviving from that or really unlucky. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
I don't know really to think of me being lucky that I survived, because the nightmares behind it and a lot of the damage that I had to repercussions from all the SA, so much tissue damage, still it's really not good. It's something I got to deal with all the rest of my life. But my kids are a true miracle. That I had them. Like the doctor said, you shouldn't have been able to have any other kids because it's badly that you're messed up internally. But they're a true miracle, and I know they're a miracle. I got on my knees both times and prayed that I was able to have two kids. Where I could two boys, where I'll be able to love and nurture because I just wanted to be a mom and show my kids that they mattered and treat them in a good way, nothing like that, too. Thank you so
well,
much.
I've always it's always been easier to cope with seeing a dead evil person who just got executed in self defense than having to deal with a decent person who died by accident. Um, Luckily, I've never had to look at somebody who had been murdered in cold blood, but when they killed Frank Sheldon, Andy Strassmeyer, and Dave Holloway. that day for trying to kill me. You know, they had already killed Sheldon and Holloway whenever I came out of that cottage after meeting with Strassmeyer, and they were like, "Well, you know, he ordered your execution." I said, "Yeah, I heard him in there. You know, he told Holloway to take me out whenever I came out and exited that cottage, so I heard him myself." And everybody asked me, "Well, what do we do with him?" I said, "Well, heck, I gave him a 20 plus year run over the surrender of that hydrogen bomb over there. And dang, he's over here trying to kill me today. Who's to say he won't try to come back again with somebody else and try to kill me again? Go in there and take him out." And I had to go in there and look at him. They cut him ear to ear.
Wow.
And I had to go in there and see that. And so I never had really any thrills of really looking at people that have died. I mean, I was shocked, watching that one boy lose his life on the motorcycle over there in Hull, Georgia, the night that he hit that cow when I had my sales crew when I was working out of Athens, Georgia. And that was the second time I saw someone die in an accident. The first time I was 16. And my dad was taking me from Marietta up to Dahlonega, and we got to the intersection of 369 and 400. And we just arrived after this truck had the jackknife and had hit this woman um, in the drive in the passenger side. I think it was. No, it was driver's side he hit her. That's right. And when we arrived, her husband and the truck driver were over there trying to get the door open to get her out. That when we pulled up a stop and went over and tried to help, and we couldn't save her. But her husband was following her from Roswell up to Dawsonville, and she ran the red light, and that truck hit her, and she lost her life, and that was
Right.
terrible. Um, but people like my brother Fred, my cousin Robert Veach, and people like that, um, they really enjoy
Yeah.
murdering people.
And remember, y'all, whenever I was on Jeff Friedland's thing and I said how they killed a little boy that run past me and all that he collapsed on the horse pits, and then they ended up tearing the horse pen down, and then they ended up burning it, and I guess they burnt the inside of the barn later after I left. But uh, Charles can validate about so many times they just kept burning the barns.
Yeah, I mean, they really qualify for the Guinness Book of World Records on the farm with the most burned barns in the entire world. That's for sure. Um, I have never seen anything else like it, and a lot of the commuters there in Marietta used to travel out the 120 loop all the time. A lot of them couldn't help notice how many times that one barn caught on fire in the loft and was put out before it burned down. And there are people up in Marietta, city limits, whose homes almost burned down before the fire department ever got
Yeah.
there. So these were planned burns, and
Yeah. You know that the horses.
I guess they'd call and report a fire at the fire department before they'd set the loft on fire to cover up, you know, to destroy the forensic
Yeah, when
evidence.
I went in there, it was
And
like it was freshly, it still, looked like it was just recently remodeled in there. I mean, even the floor looked, you know, clean. You know what I'm saying? It didn't look like it'd been stained or anything, and so it's kind of weird. You know what I'm saying? And
hmm well, that one barn had climbed up in the loft, and you know,
it's higher you
um,
realize. You wouldn't
to
think
untie
it
those
takes
two
like
boys, and they were already
you would.
they were already untied. They knew how to untie themselves. They was just afraid to leave that barn because the so forth called homeless guys that was living across the four-lane, they were there like prison guards. So if they tried to escape, they would be shot on sight. So I had to go in from behind and sneak up in there out of view of the 120 loop, or I would have been
Yeah, the
shot.
downfall of that when y'all tried to help them was y'all probably might have ended up getting them safe had she not trusted her brother John Andrew. Had Beth not trusted him and told him about y'all gonna rescue the two boys out.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking that it was a 13-year-old. He was from east of Orlando, is what he said, and the 15-year-old said he was from Birmingham. So after Wayne Williams got arrested in the Atlanta child murders, they decided to start bringing black boys in from out of state over there to Bentley Farm and maintain their operations over
And
there.
they were getting kids from foster care. And the foster care people were
Yes,
turning them
both of these
over
boys
to
said they
them,
were.
man. The foster care workers were not protecting the kids. Instead, they was making money giving them to the Bentleys and stuff, man.
Well, it's really not in so much that it was, the social workers giving them over. Is these people select their foster parents that they want to go out and get them children, and there's so many cases on the download. Way the system is set up, especially after you know, the Fair Families and Adoptive Act, I think it's what it's called, that Bill Clinton got passed there in '96, didn't help matters none either, because $1,000 for the displacement of the children comes out of the Social Security, and so it's become almost become a numbers name for Child Protective Services. DFACS is what we call it in Georgia, and DHS and DHHS in North Carolina. But it's still Child Protective Services. This is what Nancy Schaefer, Richard Jewell, and I tried to get exposed there in, 2005 and 2007.
Was it
And
was it you? Um, was it you that told me recently about that one guy? What was his name? But was looking up John Bonet, and he ended up going over there to the Netherlands
oh, that
and
was Frank
researching.
Sheldon.
No, I'm talking about the guy that recently did the research into sex trafficking over there
Oh,
in the
yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot his name. He's
conspiracy
yeah,
files
the conspiracy files.
at Facebook. Y'all can look him up, the conspiracy files at Facebook. And he's also got a group at, he's at Facebook and YouTube. Sorry, look at YouTube, and he's got videos. And he came back, and wasn't it over 5,000 federal workers who, that for a lot of years that they've been knowing were in with the child sexual crap, and they did nothing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's like John Ossoff last year put out the information. Now we're talking about he's a member of the Democratic Party here in Georgia, U.S. Senator. And, he released the information about the amount of missing children from Child Protective Services. I think it was in 2019 and 2020, talking about the children that was missing and accounted for from the foster care system in Georgia. Um, so it's a lot. It's out of hand. You know, I looked into the Delphi murders out there in Indiana, and people were claiming that the old CPS building, they saw a bunch of cars and vehicles parked around that building after the disappearance of Libby German and Abigail Williams. And I saw a video the other day that was very interesting that they had put out about um, Libby's sister and her best friend, is how much her and her best friend resembled Libby and Abby.
Wow.
And they had the security camera on this commercial building there, in that area where people would park to go back to that trail. And she told investigators that she left about 1 o'clock, and it was around 1:30 when she dropped the girls off and left them there. And they found that camera and discovered it was right close to 2 o'clock before her car even passed by, because there was only one white automobile that passed by that camera. So, way it's looking from my perspective into looking into that matter is she did not take her sister and her sister's best friend and drop them off there. She took them and dropped them off to that old Child Protective Services building there in Delphi, where all those people saw those parked vehicles at,
Wow.
because they conducted a search out there. And I've always said this alone. Once I looked at the geographical description of the place, that it would be impossible for one person, even if they're armed, to abduct two teenage girls that age out there in an area where other people were at. It would just be impossible for that to happen without anyone seeing something.
Right.
So it's looking more like now, um, that maybe Ricky Allen may be innocent after all, or if he is guilty, he didn't act alone. This still matches the similar fingerprint as the West Memphis Three, the Atlanta child murders, of course, the Levi Frady case, because Terry Hobbs, um, and his buddy David Jacoby, if I'm not mistaken, they look like some of the guys that was helping my brother and them chase me around down there in Lower Alabama before I went to Murphy, North Carolina to begin with. I already know I've gotten Ty Foster identified as one. I forgot that other boy's name. And I've got some of the guys identified here recently that was down there chasing me around in Lower Alabama, trying to kill me down there, even after Judge McLaughlin totaled out his Buick Centurion. And they were dead serious about trying to get rid of me down there, especially before they attacked the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. Um, but they're when you got the protection from God, you got protection from God. I mean, you
Right.
can lose it, but I've been blessed with that protection. I tell people, Beth Ramsey is like my guardian angel.
And y'all
Um,
want to know something funny too? The more me and him talk, the more me and Charles have talked. It's kind of funny whenever I was telling him about the state trooper that trafficked me, his daddy had trafficked me and stuff, and I told him the name. He recognized the name.
mhm. Yeah, I had a woman up there in Andrews, North Carolina, come up and have a discussion with me one day, and I still cannot place who she was. Um, I had met her once before. I really didn't know her that well, and she was the one who mentioned the name the Greenhalls.
Right.
And We were talking about the stuff down in Lower Alabama. Um, because John Mike Carr, uh, and we called him Del Montegraph. I don't know his real name. John Ramsey's partner from Polaroid, going down there to Andalusia, Alabama,
And it's
and
kind
we're
of weird.
making.
A couple months ago, I had found his picture um, in the Atlanta bigwig type of thing online, and I wish I had made copies. I thought I did. Now I cannot find it anywhere. It's like somebody went and covered up and hiding him now,
Hmm.
covering for Monty Griff.
Well, I know where he hangs out at. I don't want to say it to where and thrown him. I guess he knows I know where he hangs out at. But it's in Gwinnett County, Georgia, where he hangs out at. He'll drive out there from Marietta all the time to hang out with these guys in the men's locker room. Um, the guys got children
And
that
like,
are grown. Um, I assume he's still
and like,
married. Um,
and like you had said, and I want people to realize that be careful what pictures you put on the internet of your kids, your grandkids, or anything, because they can violate them and not so much even getting around them. Okay, they're using pictures, and they got the AI software out there where they can make child porno of your kid's body and stuff, doing sexual acts and stuff. It's so, what an innocent picture of your child, and then they're going and exploiting and making child porno out of whatever pictures that people put of their kids on the internet.
well, what gets me is the amount of people who wants to watch that crap, and
Oh yeah,
um,
it's ridiculous. How can anybody think that an infant is sexy or thinking in that kind of way? Besides
well,
being a baby, a child, how
last
seriously, how could you
last year
really
the
think
youngest. We thought I thought just a few years ago that 18 months was bad. Then out a case with a 12-month old and a 6-month old. Now I think it's gotten down to a month old infant that has been sex trafficked. I mean, this is how sick and twisted some people are.
yeah,
They
it's
had
like
that
my
case. They had that case up there. I think it was Virginia, where that guy he had that AI technology that he could sit there and impersonate anyone of any sex of any age.
wow,
He posed as a group of friends at a local high school other than where the um, 15 or 16-year-old victim attended. So when she was online, she thought she was communicating with a group of friends, both guys and girls, from a neighboring high school. So he was impersonating both boys and girls, or as I say, teenagers, and had her convinced that she was communicating, you know, with a new group of friends at the neighboring high school. And I forgot how it was, how he got caught, but fortunately, he got caught. She got rescued.
thank God.
Um, of course, the FBI was involved, and um, that's how that started coming out about how dangerous it is for your child to be online because heck, if I had that computer software, shoot, I could sit here and pose as an 80-year-old codger,
Right.
with that technology, or I could sit here and take a picture of anybody's child, male or female, and sit there and create a profile and an AI image that looks like the actual person, the actual child. So that is how dangerous technology has gotten. You
I got
know, in
I
two
got a
thousand,
question for you.
in 2000, by 2000, by 2004, we had pretty much shut down the child porn industry in the United States. The only place that was really coming out at that time was Peru. So luckily, I was able to be sworn in based upon the circumstances of my wife being from down there, that I was able to be sworn in as a U.S. envoy and go down there between the PITA conventions, which is the Peruvian International Trade Association. Have a convention every year.
What was that what was that wine project that you did? I can't remember what the name of it was.
What, Operation Predator in Peru?
Yeah, I thought it was something that wine wine I can't remember what the name of it was,
Well,
but
the
I
one
guess
for law enforcement in Cobb County, Connecticut County, Alabama, and Cherokee County, North Carolina is Project Brass Monkey.
okay.
And it's still part of Operation Birthday Card and Operation Long Wine.
The long
Operation
one.
Long
That's
Wine stemmed from Operation Birthday Card, which is the North Carolina case of the Oklahoma City and Centennial Park attacks, is Operation Birthday Card. But Operation Long Wine, I named that what it was because it's supposed to give these guys a sentence in prison a long time that they could whine about the amount of time that they received for their sentences for their crime.
right.
And then, of course, uh, when the second operation started in 2007, I decided, well, need to come up with a catchy name. It was suggested by a federal agent, something that we could make a project for the FBI, which was, Operation Child Safe Neighborhood, which became Project Child Safe Neighborhood for the FBI.
Right.
And, that rescued an additional 107 children as young as 5 years of age in that operation. That was a total of 215 children
Wow.
just rescued from those operations alone, not counting the other victims that came out, about Jeff Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There's been other children that has been rescued, you know, since her arrest.
Right.
So it's
I
like
got
Pam Bondi said, around, 250. Well, that makes me feel even better than the 323 that I got rescued in Peru in Operation Predator from 2005 to 2007. I think it was 108, if I remember correctly, in Operation Long Wine, and 107
thank
in
you.
Operation Child Safe Neighborhood. So that was 323. Now she's saying 200 250 versus 215. So that makes me feel a whole lot better that they was actually able to, get that many more children rescued.
Right. I got I got something for you to check out if you when you got time, and I know you'll want to do it too because this is right up your alley. Okay.
Okay.
There was a live that I seen of somebody the other day, and they said there's reopening up the case of John Bonet, and I thought reopening. I thought it was never closed. And they were saying something about, and I don't know how accurate it is. That's why I want you to do research on it and find out if it's true. but they said they examined her body and everything because they found DNA evidence about something. And if you could check into that and let us know and everything, whether it is accurate.
Well, yeah, I would like. They got my curiosity up about that because I never thought um, that her case would be solved by DNA because the fingerprints that you look at the similarities to the cases of the children that John Ramsey was involved in. That a lot of times after these children were murdered, they were bathed to remove
Yeah.
forensic evidence.
And John Bonet was bathed too, right?
I believe she was. Jill Robinson, she had been bathed after her uh, sexual assaults before he shot her in the face with a shotgun and killed her on
Wow.
December the 25th, 1976.
See, you would have never known it had he not told you. And over there, when Fred had said over there at Lake Graphics, and that's how we know that John Ramsey is involved with a lot of with the government type of thing as well. Because when you look at the USAID thing, and you see Lockheed Martin, look how many billions of money that USAID kept giving over there to him, because he was actually, even though he sold Leighton Graphics, he was still um, pretty well one of the top heads over there at uh, Lockheed
Lockheed
Martin as well.
Martin,
Yeah,
yeah, vice president.
yeah, it's vice president,
Which,
so you know that he had to get money and stuff out of that.
well, I had a chance to go to work for Lockheed Martin because I used to be in their junior achievement program over there at Marietta High School, even though I didn't attend Marietta High School.
Oh man, that would have been horrible. You working over there
Yeah, I had a
with
lot of relatives work there.
that.
My Uncle Durrell, the one that, used to brag about, being royalty and want to, put a bullet up Hitler's butt in the Battle of Normandy. He had to wear hearing aids because he was out there shooting those big guns. He was in the Third Army. Third Army Road is in Ackworth, Georgia, where the Third Army was trained at. There at Highway 293, there between there and Highway 41, and that's where the Third Army was trained at. Was there in Cobb and Bartow County, Georgia, which was Cass County back then. Um, but that's where he was trained at. But he was shooting those big guns, and all the soldiers that shot those big guns busted their eardrums, and every one of them were honorably discharged because they couldn't hear commands after that. And so he went to work for the Bell Bomber plant, building the bombers. And then, of course, Lockheed came in and took it over, and I think it was in the 50s or 60s. And then in the late 80s, it became Lockheed Martin. Um, so when it transitioned into Lockheed Martin, that's when I believe that John Ramsey came in the picture. I remember him saying that he used to be involved in the tub races there at Southern Polytechnic, which is now part of Kennesaw State University. Now they're in Marietta, but that is where he took his computer classes stuff was there at Southern Poly, and they used to have these little tub races. They were go karts, and they just put a tub on it and a seat in it. And every summer, one day on a weekend, they would go out there, and they on a Saturday, I think it was, and they'd put on these tub races. And so you had all these computer geeks and tech geeks and all that over there building these little go karts and putting a tub on them. That's what they call the tub races. It
Oh,
used to be
okay.
fun to go there and watch them. And he's a pretty popular guy in Cobb County, Georgia, just as much as he is out there in Boulder, Colorado. Not really, not as much as his personality, but the amount of money that he's worth. He said that after John Benet's murder, he couldn't find any work. Nobody wanted to hire him. Hell, nobody had to hire him.
No, because he was
He was
still
in
working over there.
charge.
He was still working over there at Lockheed Martin. They said they were so surprised that he showed back up as soon as he did. They said most people would not be able to go back to work that soon after their kid was murdered or whatever, right?
Yeah, it didn't phase him at all. Um, it's funny how he was supposed to be preparing for a trip to Michigan, but right after her homicide, boom, they're back in. They're over there living in their house there at Sandy Springs and Buckhead. All right, and here she is being buried by her sister Beth over there by the old Marietta High School there in the St. James Episcopal Cemetery.
Hey,
Where
can you
over there
tell
by
them?
where I used to go to junior achievement at
Can you
there
tell?
when I was in high school.
Can you tell them what happened a couple years later when you went over there to try to see Beth's grave?
Yeah, right after I brokered Operation Predator um, for the U.S. government to Peru, John Mussolini, he got thrilled. He decided he was going to help me form the Coalition for Children.
John Ramsey?
No, Mussolini.
Okay,
Uh,
so that's why we're going ahead, and that's why I went ahead and said that because
yeah.
they did which
So he was excited when he found out when I got back from Peru that I had went down there and fulfilled one of my first promises um, to the Cook family for the surrender of that hydrogen bomb. Hydrogen bomb. That was one of the craziest deals I ever had to make in my life because of these guys being terrified of even being locked up in the Cobb County jail. I told them, I said, man, I'll tell you what, boys, what, you surrender this bomb. I'll tell you, boys, what. I'll go back to Marietta and I will I will take that one guy that's watching my mom and I'll make him one of my best friends. And I'll help him get me a large child prostitution bust out of it. I said, not only that, I'll even go down there and I won't even exert my immunity or anything. I'll go down there just like a criminal. I'll wind up breaking some laws and I will serve every bit of 5 years in that county jail because they were all terrified of the Cobb County jail because in the 80s, back when the jail was in the top of the courthouse, um, some of their friends got arrested um, for child molestation and statutory rape and wound up getting raped by some black guys while they were in custody. So Eric Rudolph and the Cooks and all them, they were just terrified of the Cobb County Jail. When they went over there on June 19th, 1997, and tried to attack the Home Depot corporate headquarters,
yeah,
I knew that when the police
the
went
old
over there
people.
and tried to take them in, that they would set off that truck bomb and kill those police officers and themselves before they would be taken into custody.
Yeah, and
Is
it's
the
kind of
only
weird that the owner of that place too be was part of the bombing too.
well, it was Arthur Blank. He was the CEO. Ron Brill, he was the executive of marketing. I forgot what Bernie Marcus's title was, and Ken Lagone, and but anyway, they had them a little deal. The Atlanta Falcons was up for sale, so they had been eyeballing some of the children of some of the couples that worked there in the corporate headquarters. So they had already put contract on the land across Interstate 285 there at West Paces Ferry, um, less than a month before they tried to attack their own corporate headquarters, because Zell Miller was governor. He was going to get them this huge grant from the state of Georgia,
Yes.
being a victim company of domestic terrorism, that in order for them to rebuild, the state of Georgia would have to give them this huge, I forgot how many millions of dollars they were going to get. And then, of course, they were going to wind up getting a grant from Uncle Sam himself, and then was going to give old Art enough money to buy the Atlanta Falcons and Bernie enough money to build the Atlanta Aquarium.
Wow.
So I wound up screwing that up for them. There's no way I could not pass up 285 on my way down Interstate 75 down to the west end of the Easy Rental Claim Furniture that day. There's just no way in the world I could allow 203 employees die and be able to, uh, you know, live after that and be able to lay my head down asleep at night. They just couldn't do it. I had to show up over there and stop that attack. And I did. And that's how I found out, my brother's best friend, Roger. Well, that's really how I found out that got my confirmation that my brother, Fred, and Roger Nance were involved. And Craig Manier was there that morning, even though he did not start working for the company until later that year, September the 19th is when he finally went to work for the Home Depot Corporation. I think he was still working for Handy Andy or whatever, what other retailer that the others had worked for. And because of his, according to him, which you have to sit here and iron out what these people say, because you don't know when they're telling the truth and when they're lying. But when they were going to get rid of me on July the 7th of 2001, when my daddy was dying in the ICU there at Piedmont Hospital, and Fred got me to leave with him in his car, and he went and picked up Nance, and then he went and picked up Manier. This was the second time in my life I'd ever seen Craig Manier. And that's when he got in the car, and he looked at me and he goes, "So you're Charles." And he remembered then seeing me when I walked into the store that morning to stop the attack. He had walked right by me when he went walking up to Nance. And well, I had talked with Albert Samples and Levi Frady's mother, Marilyn Parkman, there in September of 1999. I went over there, and I'll tell you what, this is the first time in my life I ever really did feel like killing this woman. And
Yeah,
I'm
leaving
afraid I
Brady's
would
mama.
have if her male friend or boyfriend, whoever he was,
Uh,
wasn't there with her. I think I really would have killed that woman, because they were going to try to set me up for his murder and the Centennial Park attack.
wow.
And I had my other buddies with me. Um, it's all I could do to leave her house without doing her harm. That is the first time in my life I ever felt like killing somebody.
Yeah, she had something to do with her own son's murder, didn't she?
Well, she had something to do with the cover up, because according to her, um, it was on the 22nd of October that my branch manager, Charlie, over there at Electrolux and Murphy, he said he had a meeting he had to go to that day, and he had an appointment over in Cumming that he needed me to go and deliver the cheapest model vacuum cleaner that the company made at that time. And well, I already had two appointments over in Gilmer County there in Ellijay, Georgia, which I wound up selling 3 machines that afternoon and evening. So I already had my day booked. And I was like, well, Charlie, I got these 2 appointments over in Ellijay today. And he goes, well, you reckon they're sales? I said, yeah, both of them are sales. Well, what time are they? 1 o'clock and 5:30. Well, you just need to call your 5:30 and get them to reschedule, which of course by 5:30 did not want to reschedule. They did not want a representative from another branch coming out. They wanted to see what I had to offer because I was the first one to come by, knock on their door, and got them interested.
And he was not even your boss, and he was demanding all that. So something was up.
Well, I was a subcontractor. I wasn't an employee. If I'd have been assistant manager or something like that, he could have fired me for refusing, to run that appointment. But
Right.
instead, I called it in to the branch manager, Jim Vickers, over there in Gainesville, Georgia, and he wound up going out there. Well, Jim just so happened to have a similar van to mine. He had a Dodge Caravan. I had a Plymouth Voyager, same body style, similar in color. Mine was just slightly a little darker, more of a charcoal gray than his, but enough for Doug McRae to mistake his van as my van. So they went ahead and went through with the abduction of Levi there at his home. So Milton, Levi's dad, this is what I got out of Maryland, which I also got it out of Jim as well, but Jim didn't know the names like Levi's mother. Well, Milton Frady, Craig Manier, Danny Hughes, King's Leathercraft and Murphy. Okay, they're the ones who snatched Levi off his bicycle there in the carport of his mother's home, while
Well,
Jim is across the street trying to locate this address that did not exist. That if it did, would have been kind of down and across the street from Marilyn Parkman's home. So he's going door to door trying to find the name of this people in the street number that did not exist. And so he witnessed the abduction of Levi. So Milton told Levi's sister, his twin sister, Lacey, to how their mom paged him when she got home from work, which was around 5:30 that evening. This is what I got out of Maryland. So she got home, she paged Milton, and he told her to wipe down his bicycle and where to stage the abduction scene at. So her and Lacey went out there and wiped down the bicycle, loaded the bicycle in her car, drove over a mile away, and put it out. And that's where they staged the abduction scene. Now, she was told because their drug debt had run up to right at close to $80,000 that they owed the Tallets and the McRaes and Eric Rudolph.
wow.
That Milton was going to borrow, and see about borrowing, I think it was $78,000 from his $40 million inheritance that he received 10 days after his son's murder. That he was going to borrow the money toward his inheritance and he was going to pay, and Levi was going to be safely returned.
Mm.
So, according to Marilyn, she was under the impression that Levi was going to be safely returned, that she did not need to report him missing until the following evening when she got home, and that's exactly what she did. When she got home the following evening at 5:30, was called and report her son missing. Well, nobody thought that his body would be found that soon because he was found over there in Dawson National Forest around 9 o'clock that morning by a hunter.
And he was sodomized himself, right?
Yeah, according to the um, official reports, he was not mutilated, but according to one of the people that worked at the funeral home, he had been mutilated, genital mutilation,
Oh
which
man.
also occurred out there in West Memphis, Arkansas, which also occurred in some of the Atlanta child murders.
Wouldn't be
Um,
surprised if some of them happened to the Oakland City, I mean
now,
Oakland County child murders too.
yeah, some okay. So there's some more John Ramsey signature there for you. Um,
And we know Doug McGray right there, was affiliated with them, and we know that Doug McGray said yes, he's responsible over there with the child Oakland also, right?
right. Well, see, what I didn't know was in January of 1996, the FBI had went over there to Alachua, and they had planted the bugs there in Alachua because Doug McRae would walk next door from Radio Shack and would sit over there and hang out with Charlie, the branch manager.
Hmm.
So the FBI had that place bugged before I even went up there in July of 96.
Yeah, they showed up for you outside, didn't they? And then they did that and said that your car was really bugged or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped the
Well,
bugs.
yeah, what it was, yeah, they had tracking devices and listening devices. They ultra sensitive listening devices. They had my vehicle. They could hear everything I was saying when I would be in a customer's home, or if
Wow,
I
just
was in a
all the way in
store
the car too.
location cleaning upholstery. They could hear a lot of what I was saying unless
Wow.
the stores had the stereos playing, which most of the rent to own stores would have these stereos playing, so they couldn't really hear what I was saying in the stores. But when I was working part time in my sales job, they could hear everything I was saying in the customer's home. They were that sensitive.
Pretty scary.
So I was tripping out whenever Charlie told me, well, I called my 5:30. They did not want to reschedule. And I said, well, Charlie, they don't want to reschedule. He goes, well, if you go to your 5:30, I don't care if you sell 3 machines today. If you don't go out there to come and be out there at 3:30 to deliver those machines, I'm going to fire you. Well, the FBI heard that. Well, when I went outside to drink my coffee and smoke a cigarette, well, Matt McRae, he come walking out there, and he sat there and told me, he goes, yeah, Charles, if you decide not to go out there to Cumming and you go to your 5:30 today, we'll come out there and we'll kill you and your customers. So I'm really shook up then. I'm really nervous then because something just told me they was going to wind up murdering a boy and try to set. I just knew that's what they were going to do. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out a way to get out of this one. So I go ahead and drive down to the Waffle House there in LJ, hoping when I went inside that I would see a police officer, deputy, or somebody in there having breakfast because it was always busy at the Waffle House in LJ in the mornings. So I go in, I eat my breakfast. I don't see any member of law enforcement. I sit there. Um, there was a bunch of people that came in wanting a place to sit. So I was like, well, good grief. I guess get up, pay my bill, and go on outside. Well, I go outside and I hear this voice, Charles. And I look around and I don't see anybody. And I hear over here, and I look over, and I see this distinguished looking guy, dark hair, mustache, standing by a white Silverado, motioned me to come over. So I go walking over to him, and I think it was Agent Steve Maxwell of the um, Chatsworth Dalton field office of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. So
Excuse me.
he told me that he had been contacted by the FBI and wanted to know what was going on. It's like, well, I can't say anything right now. They got these ultra sensitive devices on my van. I said it real low. And he goes, no problem. He reaches in, he pulls out this briefcase and looked like an old meter. So we walk over to my van. And on our way over, I said, well, they told me if I tamper with a battery, they'd know. He goes, no, 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 no. It don't work that way. So he hooks this device up to my van. We walk back over to his truck. He asked me if I had any pagers or uh, anything in the vehicle that would the batteries would drain down. It would drain down the batteries of anything like pagers and stuff, but it wouldn't drain down the car battery, which I didn't have a pager or anything.
Yeah, they didn't have cell phones back then.
Yeah, so we sat there right around 8 minutes after we're sitting there, and he goes, well, 7 minutes. He goes, well, here in about another 2 or 3 minutes, whatever's attached to your vehicle will be drained. And he goes, what do you think's happening over there and coming that they're so important that they want you over there? And I said, well, it's not going to be a terrorist attack because I'm not going to a commercial business. And I said, what I think they're going to do is they're going to wind up abducting and murdering a boy over there and try to set me up and frame me for it in the Centennial Park attack. And I was right. And so he asked me, he goes, well, you got appointments today? And I was like, yeah, I got 2 appointments. And so I had to give him the appointments to where, the 5:30 to where he could get with local law enforcement and screen the area from 5:30 so nobody would show over there and do any harm to me or nor my customers. Well,
Okay, hold
they
on a
didn't
minute.
even know what the address was because they were going to go by the tracking device on my vehicle to find out where I was. Well, the batteries had been drained, so they couldn't find me anyway. So I called the bomb lead that my branch manager gave me. I called that in to the Gainesville, Georgia sales branch. And of course, Jim, he's the one that drove out to Cumming to see if he could find the address, which I knew did not exist. It was just to get me out there
Hey,
in the
Charles.
vicinity.
Hey, Charles.
Uh,
Read the comment right here. I'm gonna let you respond to that. Okay.
okay.
And I just wondering what is the purpose of this online conversation? It's full of information, yet no arrest yet. Basically, awareness, I think, and hoping that bringing this forward, and he's hoping that they do end up getting arrested because it's kind of crazy that all these high, powerful people keep getting away with what they're doing to our children. That does that sum it up, Charles?
Well, yeah, I don't know why they would expect any arrest with the Biden administration. Um,
Yeah, if they were reputable people, yeah, they're right there. Had y'all not noticed that a lot of the people that's getting arrested is people in sting operations, and it's like, yay, yay, yay. But no, it's not that good because why aren't they not going after some of the higher profile people? because they're making it look like they're doing something when they're really not doing it.
Oh
And
yeah.
they
I mean, when you got Hunter Biden in the Ramsey home, I mean, are you going to expect any arrests when his daddy's president?
and plus two of the people are DOD, work for DOD.
Well, according one daughter, another DOD contractor was there named Victor Hansen. According to his daughter, she believes he was also involved in the Oakland County child murders and the Atlanta child murders.
Wow.
Um, there was a lot of powerful people involved in the homicide of John Benet Ramsey. Matter of fact, um, the West Memphis Three and Levi Frady. 10 days after Levi was murdered, his daddy got a $40 million inheritance. And he vowed that his son would not live to see one penny of that money. And that's how much he hated his son.
Yeah.
Levi, Levi would go to church. He knew how to play the piano.
Uh-huh.
He started inviting his friends to school to church. He ran with a boy down the street that was was Hispanic. If I remember correctly, his family was from Mexico. Some of his friends at school um, were black African descent. Milton, um, a chomo, and a white supremacist. So he hated his son with a passion. That he vowed that Levi would not live to receive one penny of his money.
Yeah, they're
And
all in some court. Yeah, they're all in cahoots. Yes,
yeah,
even
um,
even with a child that he seen. Where were you at? You were still down there near the water when they were raping two boys, right? And
yeah, it was
um,
the Chattahoochee River, 1982.
and there was even Ted Turner from Turner Broadcasting Channel. He was there, and he was involved in it too.
That's right. I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw him because I did see him in the moonlight, and I couldn't see how many people. I just saw a lot of dark figures in the shadows, but I couldn't make out how many. It was a lot of people. And then of course, that's when I found out my cousin Robert Beach was involved, and Ed Bentley Jr. was involved, and it wasn't until um, last year that I found Fred Bentley Jr.'s picture online that I was actually able to identify him by name. I had met him when they raided my house in 2013, but I never was told his last name. I was just told his name was Fred when I stepped over and talked with Robert.
And then there was a guy for the dating site that when I was living in Marshall County in Alabama, and my boyfriend was having his place repoed, and he lived in Georgia as well, and so my friend was going to move in with his daddy, and I wouldn't have been allowed to move in there, so I was going to go to Georgia and live with my sister. Well, this guy from Georgia was going to come pick me up, and he went under his username for the dating site. His name was Butterbrains, and then I asked you about it after I seen the guy's picture. I said, "This looks more like Butterbrains than the actual name he told me his name was." And you said, "Yeah, that is this guy's nickname too." He said, "It's like okay, there's some validation there, right?" But it was so scary being inside his home and then going into his bedroom, and he opened up his closet and he moved a couple of boards to the side, and there was a hidden bedroom in there. And he said, "Would you like to check out the hidden bedroom?" You go in the club. I was like, no, he was wanting to trap me in there. I felt like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's Joe Pugh. He was an investigator with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
And he's a
Um,
investigator and look, and with this child sex trafficking. See,
yeah.
he's like, what do we do with her? What do I do with her? So while he was gone, I went ahead and called my ex boyfriend back. He said the trailer, this place where he was living. And so when the guy got back, I said, take me back home, you know, so you ain't got to worry about me. But before I left, he was trying to get me down in the basement, you know, get me to go first. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 I'm not going down in that basement like that. I, I had a sense to know that something was going to happen if I did, you know.
hmm
I was still strong, so it would have been hard for him to, you know, he's kind of a little chunky.
Uh huh.
So I could easily push him and, you know, probably make it out the door, you know, but that don't mean that he couldn't call some of his buddies and stop me, you know.
Well, what the thing
But
about
I guess what saved me is them knowing that I done spoke to somebody else, you know what I'm saying?
well, once the FBI signed me the case on July the 30th, 1996, they had to immediately start investigating child sex trafficking. That was part of the deal for me undertaking the case.
And I would have never known that he was in with that trafficking ring had you not told me and me not seen that, you know. So I did not know back then the danger I was really in, and then finding out like a couple years ago, you know.
Well, I had a lot of people tell me I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and this, that, the other. Well, I didn't get myself into a doggone thing. I
They
was
put you in
dragged
it.
into it. And they'd say, well, you don't know who I was involved. Well, I had a pretty good, idea. I mean, good grief, when I was 16 years old, going down, you know, around, you know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and demanded the safe return of my older brother and his best friend. And seeing all these people down there, in the shadows that I couldn't even count. There was so many of them. I had a pretty good idea, you know, especially by June of 1997. I had a pretty good idea of what I was up against once I stopped the truck bomb attack on the Home Depot corporate headquarters. Because right about, I think it was about a week before they planned to kill me on July the 4th, 1997, that I went down to Cumberland Mall and had lunch at the food court. And I stepped outside, and that's when Ron Brill approached me. And of course, Ron, he's, a lot of them, they're this real friendly, nice guy, this, just
That's how they
easygoing.
act.
You
Yeah.
just take him as, just a very friendly, businessman. That's the way these guys are. They'll strike you as a harmless, friendly, old guy there.
Yeah, like I thought
Well,
that
I had
butter
seen
braids was
him.
harmless, you know.
Yeah, I had seen him down there at the river that night, but he had lost some weight and grew a mustache. So he didn't look the same when he was there at Cumberland Mall than when I saw him down there at the Chattahoochee that night. So I didn't recognize him, in which I didn't know who he was to begin with.
Yeah.
So he
It's
comes walking up to me and he goes, "Aren't you Charles Rogers?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. How do you know who I am?" "Oh, well, I'm real good friends with your cousin Robert Veach." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Well, dang, how long you known Robert?" "Well, back ever since he worked with the police department." I said, "Well, did you work with him for the police department too?" "Oh, no, no. He worked for the police department when I first moved down here from New Jersey. I was like, really? And I was
Wow.
like, well, what kind of work do you do? Uh, oh, wait a minute. Before I asked him that, he goes, yeah, I also know your brother Fred. I was like,
Oh,
really?
geez.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Roger Nance's best friend. I was like, really? He goes,
He told
yeah.
on himself. He told on himself right there.
Yeah. So I asked him, I said, well, what kind of work you do? And he goes, well, I'm executive marketing for the Home Depot Corporation.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, really? I said, well, shoot, that means you were in the store over there here, you know, a little over a week ago. When I went over there and stopped that truck bomb attack, I said, how'd you like the way I handled that? He goes, well, yeah, I was kind of impressive, but you know what? Nothing as impressive as when you went down there to the Chattahoochee River that night and demanded the safe return of your brother and Roger Nance. And I was like, what, you were down there? Oh, yeah. So, how old were you? What, 15, 16? I was like, yeah, I was 16. Yeah, I mean, just the way you went down there. And nobody even knew you were there until after you walked up. Just the way you snuck in there and the way you boldly demanded the safe return of your brother and bluffed everybody into believing that you had a group of friends and two police officers up there waiting on you to come back. He goes, you had us worried when you came down there. We thought we were about to have some problems when you came down there. But you were only 16 years old. That is what I found impressive about you. Just stopping this truck bomb attack last week was really nothing. That is what impressed me. And I was like, really? And I'm trying to remember what else he said, but he knew John Ramsey. And I was like,
Right.
well, even though my brother Fred, my cousin Robert, Roger Nance, did John Ramsey? He goes, oh, yeah, I know John. I've known John for years and all that. And I was actually out there in Boulder, um, this past Christmas. I was like, really? So you were out there when they murdered John Bonet? Yeah, I was out there with your brother and your cousin and that bunch.
Wow.
Well, you got to remember, July the 4th, they thought they was going to blow me up either at Cumberland Mall or at Six Flags over Georgia. So I guess he felt like it was okay to talk to me.
Yeah.
What was I going to do? Go running over to the police, with the tracking devices and bugs on the vehicle and all that.
Plus, a lot of the police work for them.
Yeah. Well, that was my deal with the FBI was I couldn't provide the FBI with any information whatsoever. My job was to go up there and stop as many attacks as I could until I got killed. And
Hey, it's been over 2 hours. It's been like 2 hours and 15 minutes almost. Also, I just thought about something. You know how people are so eager about and saying how vast that the Epstein files will be, right?
hmm
Y'all, this Epstein's list is nothing at all compared to all the shenanigans and all the stuff that all this whole organization is doing and has done.
well, Pam Bondi stated it's really, really terrible stuff that he was involved in, and she is correct. I mean, he did not come into the picture until I think 1978, right about the time that Home Depot moved its operation to Cobb County. Was around the
Wow.
same time that Les Wexner brought in Jeff Epstein. and pretty much trusted him with his fortune. Well, Epstein was also involved in the Atlanta child murders.
Pepsi was probably knew Frank Sheldon too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now
And
Frank
so
Shelton had
frequent over
first,
there at what was that? North Fox Island.
yeah, North Fox Island up there in Michigan, and he was from New York, and he used to go over there. I'm trying to think of the name of that college, um, where it's where they teach the arts, acting and music.
Uh-huh.
John and Patsy had a house there as well. That's where Jeffy um went to study his music at. He was a musician, and
Oh, okay.
uh, and he was a teach. I think he was a music teacher whenever he got hired by Les Wexner. So I'm beginning to wonder if he was initiated in the Oakland County child murders. It's not unclear to me. I don't know, but I know he was definitely involved in the West Memphis three homicides, the Atlanta child murders. Um, Now, I've had people tell me that he wasn't in Boulder when they murdered John Bonet, that he was actually in New York. But I actually believe that Ghislaine was in Boulder because they had sex trafficked a 22-year-old woman um, that Christmas there in Boulder to a lot of their guests.
Wow.
And um, so she was kind of clingy to Eric Rudolph there in the 90s.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when that picture of her got taken with John Bonet, that was during Oktoberfest on a Saturday
Yeah.
um,
She
in
tried to look away, but
1996.
yeah, she tried to look away, but she was still caught in it.
Yeah, well, Hunter Biden was with him that day as well. And Hunter Biden, even told me um, during our meeting after I stopped the bomb attack to the ball ground little league baseball game there north of Canton, Georgia. That when the Cooks brought him over there from Young Harrison, we had our conversation. He told me that he was out there in Boulder when they murdered John Bonet, and I put him on the spot. And I asked him, I said, "Well, do you believe that she deserved to die?" And he goes, "No, I don't believe any child deserves to die." So that's one thing I could say positive about the guy, being the son of the creep, um, that his daddy is. Um,
Didn't he
some
say that
form.
he was sex trafficked as well?
Yeah, he said he was messed with whenever he was 8 years old. Now he never said by who, and we made an agreement for me to meet with his uncle Jim. Uh,
I think his phone just died.
if I'm
You
not
there?
mistaken, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, was around the 13th or the 14th. I met up with his uncle up in Marble, North Carolina, and of course I had that one guy sit there before I met with and told me he was going to beat me to death, and I wound up paralyzing him for almost um, 3 years, beating him down. Which, of course, when he came over and met with me there in '98 at the Waffle King, he was still in a wheelchair, but he was able to get up and move some, and he had converted and became a minister, and wanted to come over there and see me and let me know that he had turned his life over to the Lord. And we
And
sat there and talked for a little bit, but I wound
good.
up meeting with Jim Biden.
Before we go, I got another question for you. Okay.
Got out of there alive.
Okay. I got another question for you.
Okay.
Um, did Where were you at when John Andrew was just eyeing you and you didn't know for sure who he was at the time or something like that, or and he just looked so mad at you like he could kill you or something like that. He just, and it was an uneasy feeling or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
There's a chain of bars. They're north of Atlanta. One in Marietta called the Place. It's off of Sandy Plains Road. They're at the Highway 5 connector and Canton Road. In between those and the shopping center, and that's where a lot of my friends that I grew up with like to go and hang out. Which sometimes I would go over there time to time and um, sit there and um, drink a cold one or two with some of my buddies I grew up with. Is why I knew to go. They even knew some of the bartenders. But that was about 2 weeks after about a week or two, not quite 2 weeks, I guess around 10, 11 days after I had two guys decide to jump me over at Chico Deals and another establishment at Sprayberry Crossing. Um, there was four of my buddies in there when that happened. They want to jump up and help me, and they realized they didn't need any help because I wound up knocking both of those guys out and put both of them in the ICU at Kennestone Hospital.
Yeah,
So
you took
it was
kickboxing, so
over.
that's how you was able to fight.
Yeah, it was over getting Epstein arrested um, and trying to get his daddy arrested and instead having Epstein arrested, and so he had his panties tied in the knot over that one. So I was coming up from Atlanta up 75 one evening and exited there on the Highway 5 connector, and I was fumbling with some stuff there while I was driving. So I was doing the speed limit 55. And people in Marietta, when you're there on the Highway 5 connector doing 55, they're screaming around you, doing around 65.
That's
And
what they
so
do
I
on
got,
the interstate too. When it's 70 miles per hour, they just pass you like you're not even going at all.
yeah, so I'm doing the speed limit 55, and I got five cars right in behind me. Not a one of them wanted to pass me, and that was kind of strange. So when I made a right on Sandy Plains, they made a right. So I went up and made a right on Canton Road. They made a right. All five vehicles made a right behind me. I was like, well, I'm beginning to wonder if I'm being followed, which I was. So I pulled into the Dairy Queen, pulled around it. They pulled into the Dairy Queen. So I knew then I was being followed. So I was like, well, shoot, I'm going to pull over here to the place and go in there and see what they do then. And when I did, my same buddies that was over at Chico Deals, they were in there as well. These boys are not the ones that you want to get in scrap with. I mean, they're pretty rough characters. So they were in there when him and his five buddies followed me in there. So I went up to the bar and was talking with bartenders and some of the waitresses. They hadn't seen me in a while. We were standing there talking when they came in, and he came over and sat down at a table and just sat there and just stared at me. And I looked over and saw him, but I knew he looked familiar, but I just couldn't quite place him. And I'm sitting there wondering who this guy is. Well, one of the waitresses said, well, Charles, you got that guy sitting over that table that's doing nothing but staring at you. And I was like, yeah, I noticed that. I'll go over there and find out in a minute what his deal is. Of course, which they saw his five buddies come in behind him. So I walked over and sat down at the table in front of him. And I was like, I said, he always make it a habit to stare at People like that. Mm, no, just you.
So he knew who you
Well, did
were.
your
That's
mom
why he
ever
told you.
teach you? Did your mom ever teach you it's rude to stare at people? You don't need to talk about my mom. I said, well, what? What are you going to do? What, my butt? You might be surprised what I can do. Okay, well, who are you? Well, that's not important that I tell you. I said, yeah, well, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. You can either tell me who you are, or I can beat it out of you. So I guess he realized then he better tell me who he was. He goes, well, I'm Beth Ramsey's younger brother. So right then I'm ready to kill him. He jumps up.
uh,
He goes running out of the place. And I knew better to chase him out. Well, we had his five buddies in there. I was like, well, shoot, and deal with his five buddies. Well, of course, Jimmy and Lee and Tony got one come up like he's going to come toward me. Well, Jimmy got in front of him, looking at him. Well, what are you about to do? And another one was him, and of course, Tony got, oh yeah, buddy, what you about to do? And they realized they had a problem then. And the ones that came over toward the restroom who were standing behind me, one they these guys, he's a pretty stocky guy. He decided he's going to come in and he's going to jump on me. And his buddy grabs him and he snatches him back and he slings him up against the wall. And he goes, this guy will freaking kill you. He's like, what? And I was like, no, man, he don't believe it. By all means, let him loose. Let him learn the hard way. And he kept wanting to act like he's ready. His buddy sitting there. I said, no, man, let him go. He don't believe you. I'll make a firm believer out of him. So the ones that Jimmy were holding back, and his buddy sitting there said, man, never mind it, man. Just, he don't know any better. So I went over there to the ones that Jimmy and Tony and Lee were holding. And I went over there and I forgot what all was said. But I asked them what their problem was, and they sat there and called me an informant. And I said, informant, hell. I said, hell, I'm appointed governor of the state of North Carolina, buddy. Ain't no informant to it. And which, of course, I had already walked around the back of the bar to see if any more of them had been back in the section and behind it, make sure
like
we
I
all
said,
had
you
them up there in front in case we were ready to plaster them to the walls.
hold on a minute, Charles. Like I tell people they could go to Signal Hire. I don't know if it's .com or where, and that's where you see Charles's name right there in North Carolina.
Yeah. But that's how everybody in that establishment found out. Besides my buddies, they already knew. But that's how everybody else in that establishment found out that I was actually law enforcement instead of a informant.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I think 2 hours and 30 minutes. If you ever want to come back, I know a lot of people like to have questions for you. Sometimes when you come in here, we got a lot of people basically question and answers. And since it's been 2 hours and 30 minutes, we'll have to do that another time. We'll have more question and answers, right?
Well, hopefully we can. If this stuff is really, really released on the Epstein files, may not be able to do any more interviews until we wrap up the rest of this mess.
Exactly.
So we'll
Yeah.
just have to play it
And
by
I'll,
ear.
I'll have to make sure you hang low a little while too, I guess.
Well, to me, it's a matter of safety. I fulfill um, my promises to the people up there who used to hide Eric Rudolph out from the FBI. I promised them that before I before I came back up there, I would release my information to the people before I released it to the FBI.
Yes.
And I was just, you know, these people after that they protected me, and it was, I really owe it to them, and I really owe it to the American people. That way, that way it doesn't get changed nor diluted or modified. People can fully understand exactly who all is involved.
Exactly.
Um, and
But it
I,
goes a lot bigger than you know, when you're all the names you listen and stuff like that. So we know that's even bigger than the names what you said because they got a lot more affiliations. But like you said, the gridiron in Georgia basically is all over the U.S.
well, yeah, I mean, Georgia is a rogue state. I mean, there is no justice in the state of Georgia, and as we're starting to see now, there's really no justice in the rest of the nation on account of this organization. It's
Yes,
we're in a two-tier judicial system. Every time we turn on the news, they want to talk about protecting their democracy. Well, the United States never was established as a democracy. Matter of fact, our founding fathers stated a democracy be a threat toward individual God given rights, that we were established as a constitutional republic. So whenever I hear the term democracy, all I'm hearing is the word hypocrisy.
right,
Don't don't do as we don't do as we do. Do as we say.
right.
And it's kind of like I tell people: if you live in Cobb County, you're gonna molest or rape a child. You better invite Judge McLaughlin or Grady Moore at the DA's office, or you know. Uh,
Because otherwise, you think
because of
they're in
Robert
competition.
Veach or one of the Bentleys over there at Bentley and Bentley Law Group. Because if you don't, you get busted. They're going to make an example out of you.
Just because of the fact of they don't want competition. I think you said right.
Yeah, they hate competition. Well, Ron Paul says there and says, "Don't steal. The government hates competition." Well, I got my slogan. You know, mm, don't sex traffic children because the state of Georgia hates competition. So
That's a sad
it
but
is
true fact.
sad. It really is.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, and we'll try to have you on here again sometime, and just for a Q&A type or of a deal. Thank you so much, and everybody that's listening, and may God bless y'all.
Well, thank you for having me on, Miss Clark, and you and everybody else have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. God bless.